The Bluestone Challenge gives the men and women of Pentridge a chance to pit themselves against well-known sporting champions in weightlifting, swimming, running and boxing. The idea is to promote sport within the jail, and the action was aplenty. For the media, it was a chance to get inside the walls of Pentridge for the first time since the deaths of 5 prisoners in Jika 3 weeks ago. That incident sparked government inquiries, searches and claims that prisoners had caches of arms and were ready for a series of protests against prison conditions. But there were none of the reported tensions today, as everyone seemed determined to enjoy themselves. Former world champion and leading contender for the world junior lightweight crown Lester Ellis drew the most attention. Ellis and his challenger Mark had previously sparred, but that didn't deter the challenger.
I knew it was going to be a hard spar, because every time Lester and I have sparred before, they've always been hard spars, and he's a good hard hitter.
They don't get to see you, mate, so if I can help in any way, especially on the boxing side of it or fitness, I'm glad to help.
Reports it was all in good fun at the annual Bluestone Challenge.
It was off with the prison blues and on with the jogging shoes at the 3rd annual Bluestone Challenge today. Inmates who dared to take on boxing tough guy Dave Russell were given a quick sparring lesson to the delight of the fellow prisoners. Stars of the footy field Craig Starkovich and Paul Tuddenham then showed plenty of dash at the end of the team sprint. And despite cramped conditions, both prisoners and sporting guests seemed to enjoy the friendly rivalry. The 7 teams comprised sporting identities and Pentridge and Fairley prisoners. And at the end of the day, it was a chance for those heavily armed participants to show off their strength. And the winner, an amazing 138 push-ups in 1 minute. Dean Craig, 10 News.
10 Evening News, hope from a hellhole of violence as 5 hardened prisoners use shock tactics to turn would-be criminals from a life of crime.
They're led past coiled razor wire, bars, steel cages, but not even that can prepare them for what they're about to hear.
A 10 Evening News exclusive.
It comes in the shape of a day in prison program aimed at pulling young offenders away from a path of crime. It started after 5 of Victoria's most hardened criminals wrote 1,500 letters to judges, police and politicians pleading for a chance to prove the scheme could work. We were allowed rare access to the maximum security areas of Pentridge to talk to the 5 men involved. Welcome to Pentridge, maximum security A division. For years now, we've been told that this place is a hellhole, and it is. It's violent, it's rife with drugs, but it's not without hope. There is hope here, and we've found it. And surprisingly, it rests with 5 of the state's most hardened criminals. You are now seeing what many young offenders experience on a day in prison program. To shock them away from a career in crime, youngsters are confronted with the hard, uncompromising faces of Ross, Mark, Marcus, Lee and Billy, who've notched up 52 years in jail. Their crimes range from drug trafficking to armed robbery and murder. Right from the start, none of the real horror of prison is hidden from the kids who come into Pentridge for the day in prison program. They're led past coiled razor wire, bars, steel cages, but not even that can prepare them for what they're about to hear.
We tell them about the violence. This place lives on violence. It doesn't matter how good you can fight. There's no one-on-one fighting in this place. You know, they'll get you while you might be sitting on the toilet with your pants down. 4 of them will run in.
Get you in the shower, they can.
The shower.
You might be sitting upstairs playing cards, and all of a sudden an argument will break out, and the bloke will produce a knife and just stab the bloke sitting next to you. I mean, you're so used to it, you're so tuned into seeing it. My reaction was, oh, yeah, another 2 packets.
Yeah, just keep playing. That's it.
You know, and Roscoe marks them. He says, oh, yeah, no, 6 out of 10, you know. I mean, if you had graphic pictures...
Yeah. We lean against the cell doors and we know that something's going to go on or something's going to go down. The next moment we see somebody come staggering at the cell, like injured or whatever, and we say, oh, yeah, good one, we give him 7 out of 10 for that, things like that. Especially happens every day.
Overall, you know, I mean, it is a violent environment. We become inured to that violence. And then when you get out, you take that violence out into the society with you. I mean, you sit on a lot of emotions here, and aggression's one that's sort of always on the move. And when you go out, it doesn't take a lot to sort of start the ball rolling again. And you find that you're a lot more violent than what you thought you were. And your crimes are deemed to be a lot more violent. And that's really what jail is. It's a breeding ground for this. I mean, a kid comes in here fairly innocent, so to speak, to the ways of the world. He goes out a bigger and better criminal.
The reason we've been allowed behind these walls is because not only is something remarkable happening to keep people out of prison, but something equally remarkable is happening in the hearts and minds of some of this jail's toughest criminals.
You know, I'm feeling a lot better about myself now. I mean, I don't have to be, as they say, an evil bastard anymore, you know. I mean, I can
prove we can do that. Yeah, we're trying to prove we can do
We
something.
talked about the kids for days afterwards saying, oh yeah, I think he'll go all right and things like that.
If you were a 17-year-old kid and you came in here and you went through the program and you come into this room and you sat down on the chair and I said to you, well, you know, listen, Joe, this is what goes on here. We had an incident not long ago where a bloke in another division had drugs secreted in his anus and 3 prisoners grabbed him. They assaulted him and actually dug the drugs out. I mean, if that 17-year-old kid can't grasp something out of that, well, he's not going to
the photos of it.
Well, yeah, and then you produce the photos.
People have been killed for whatever, you know, drugs, whatever.
Yeah, there's been quite a few suicides too through it, you know, that you don't hear about, that they either owe drug debts or they've been raped and they just can't take it anymore. So the next morning when the officer opens up the door, there's a kid dangling there from the ceiling.
There's nothing so gruesome as seeing a kid hanging there from his guitar.
That sort of death rattle and that.
Yeah.
Is only a young kid?
Young kid, hung himself.
We don't want to see these kids doing the same thing.
Yeah,
so that's what we're trying to get across to them, and out of it, well, it's making us all better people, hopefully, and we're achieving something with these young kids so they don't have to go through the heartache, and their families don't have to go through the heartache that us and our families have gone through.
So far, not one of the young people confronted by these 5 extraordinary men has re-offended. That's a saving to the community of $40,000 a year for every kid kept out of jail. But the saving is even greater than that. There's a kind of saving grace in seeing compassion and self-worth kindled in these men's eyes. Hope, straight from the heart of hell. 17 to 21-year-olds are the fastest growing age group in Victoria's prison population. There are more than 200 already in the system. Hopefully the Day in Prison program can turn that tide by reaching young offenders before they enter the prison system.
From inmates giving him lots of bouquets, well, it seems rather far-fetched, but the retiring John Darcy Dugan earned this rare praise today for helping prisoners start a scheme to deter young offenders. Diana King reports.
Chief Magistrate John Dugan, affectionately called Darcy, arrived at Pentridge Prison with his successor, Sally Brown. It was for a ceremony to mark the success of a program developed by 5 long-term prisoners with the help of Mr Dugan, known for his courtroom joviality, and the Office of Corrections. It's called a Day in Prison program, allowing first-time young offenders to see life behind the Bluestone walls and hopefully put them off crime for life. 22 have tasted prison life and only 1 has re-offended. After 40 years in the legal profession, Darcy Dugan has met these prisoners, 2 serving murder sentences on more than 1 occasion.
Not bad, this bloke. He's been on the bench 40 years and only made 1 mistake. I didn't convict you, did I? You never give me bail.
There was certainly mutual admiration on both sides of the bench.
Maybe, just maybe, if there was a scheme like this 25, 30 years ago, these fellas wouldn't be here. I don't know. But they want to give these kids, give them the insight of what it's all about in here. It's not easy, it's not funny, and it's not glorified. It's a real tough, hard life.
Mark Smith, one of the scheme organisers, is serving an 18-year murder sentence.
That's all jail is. It's a life of misery. We try and open up their eyes to let them know what jail's all about.
It's now planned to introduce the scheme to the Geelong and Fairleigh Women's Prison.
Not all the time with good results, I can tell that right now.
Tracy Dale, National 9 News.
In finance news,
it's promoting a highly successful scheme to keep young people out of jail. The project has been so successful it is now to be expanded. Jim Brown went inside Pentridge to see prisoners pay their respects to the man who put them there.
This was the formal act of recognition to mark the success of one of the most innovative programs ever devised to keep young people out of jail, the Day in Prison program, conceived by 4 prisoners doing time. Prison authorities and soon-to-retire Chief Magistrate John, or Darcy Dugan, got right behind the scheme, and the initial success rate has delighted everyone. One of the keys to its success is the warm relationship between Darcy Dugan and the men he's dealt with on the magistrate's bench.
Where's your other hand, Darcy?
According to the prisoners, Darcy Dugan kicked down bureaucratic doors to get the scheme up and running.
Maybe, just maybe, if there was a scheme like this 25, 30 years ago, these fellas wouldn't be here, I don't know.
One of the prisoners who counsels young offenders, Bill Prideaux, explained the importance of keeping them out of the prison system.
You know, they call it the College of Knowledge. They're learning how to steal better cars, maybe how to do armed robberies, you know, get involved with drug dealers. And they just become another cog in the wheel, and you lose them. You know, you can find a kid, if he comes back here 2 or 3 times before he's 21, you generally find that that's his lifespan.
Apart from the humanitarian arguments, there are sound financial reasons why the day in prison program should be expanded. It's claimed 24 out of the 25 youngsters who've spent 1 day in Pentridge have decided to keep out of the place for good. At $40,000 per prisoner per year to keep them, that's more than $1 million saved for the taxpayer already. Jim Brown, 10 Evening News.
And when we come back, American sailors